All right, picture this. We're dropping right into a body cam view. Snow is swirling everywhere. The only thing you can hear is the crunch of boots and heavy, ragged breathing. This is the story of a man being completely erased and the nightmare that crawled back in his place.
Of Sergeant Elias Thorne. The date is October 14th, 2008. He's trapped in the Hindu Kush Mountains. His team's been wiped out. You can practically hear the static crackling as he keys his mic. His voice is strained, but you can hear the training. It's steady. He's a soldier, and he still believes help is on the way.
His words just hang there in the static for a moment. And then, nothing. Just silence. The line is cut. Think about that. The only response he gets is the cold, mechanical click of being unplugged from the world. His own government didn't just leave him behind. They deleted him.
But here's the thing. They made one fatal mistake. They assumed he was gone, just a ghost, a file they could bury under a mountain of paperwork. But some ghosts, well, they learned to walk again. For 15 long years, he wasn't dead. He was waiting, and he was watching.
So to really understand the ghost, we have to go back to the moment he was created. This is Operation Red Mercury, the mission that officially never even happened. This is where it all started.
This heavily redacted document tells you everything you need to know without saying a word. Red Mercury was what they call a shadow protocol. A black ops so secret, so deniable, that when things went bad, the answer wasn't a rescue mission. It was an erasure. After all, you can't save a team that never existed in the first place. And here is the cold, hard math of it all. On one side of the scale, you've got the careers of a few very powerful men. On the other side, the life of Sergeant Thorne and his team. His survival was weighed against their ambition, and it wasn't even a debate. It was just a simple, brutal transaction.
Okay, so now we jump forward. 15 years of absolute, deafening silence. This is the place where Sergeant Thorne died, and where something, or someone, else was born from the ashes.
Just look at that number. 15. Let that really sink in for a second. 15 winters in one of the harshest places on Earth. 15 years of being a ghost, not just to the world he left behind, but probably to himself too.
But see, he didn't just endure it, he evolved. This timeline really breaks it down. Year 1 was just pure survival. By year 5, he'd adapted. But the next 10 years, that was all observation. He studied the men who left him for dead, their routines, their homes, their technology. And then, at the 15-year mark, re-emergence.
The man who came back was not the soldier who was left behind. That military code he lived by, the rules of engagement, all of it was just burned away by the cold. What came back was something else, untraceable, unpredictable. A ghost, literally forged in cold and silence.
And that brings us to his revenge. A ghost doesn't use bullets, right? A ghost uses fear. He becomes that shadow you swear you saw on the security feed, that glitch in the system. He decided to dismantle them from the inside out.
I mean, just look at these methods. This is not a military operation. It's a psychological warfare masterclass. A car's GPS suddenly rerouting itself into a dark alley. A smart thermostat dropping the temperature to freezing in the middle of the night. A baby monitor that starts whispering static. He's not breaking down their doors, he's breaking down their minds.
And that was the absolute genius of his plan. He took the connected, comfortable world his betrayers had built for themselves, and he turned every single device they owned into an instrument of pure torment.
And his calling card? This is just brutal. He would leave this on their pillow, a printed transcript of his final transmission. He didn't just want them to be afraid. He wanted them to remember, every single night before they went to sleep, the exact moment they condemned him to die.
And so, this all leads to the climax. The paranoia is at its absolute peak. The targets are broken, and down the dark, flickering hallway of some high-rise corporate skyscraper, it's time for the reckoning.
So I have to ask, how do you fight an enemy you can't even see? An enemy who knows your every move, who basically lives inside your walls and your technology?
The answer is you don't. You finally do the one thing you refused to do 15 years ago. You listen. And this is where the story just flips every expectation on its head. The final showdown isn't a gunfight. It's not a physical battle at all. A gun is placed on the polished boardroom table, and then it's just pushed aside. The real weapon is about to be revealed.
And there it is, a simple, old tape recorder sitting in the middle of a table surrounded by the men who betrayed him. The reels are spinning, and playing from it is the original audio from 2008. Not Throne's plea for help, but the cold, clear voice on the other end giving the order, cut him off. It's the ultimate checkmate, not with force, but with the undeniable, recorded proof of their own treason.
So we're left with this question, as that tape recorder just keeps spinning in the dark. Thorne didn't kill them. He just exposed them with their own words. He forced a reckoning with the truth. So what is justice, really? Is it an eye for an eye? Or is it simply holding a mirror up to the guilty and letting the whole world see what they did?
Today, we're diving deep into a story that's not just about bullets and betrayal. It's about a soul that was completely shattered and then rebuilt by trauma. This is a journey into a heart literally frozen by loss and a hatred that burns colder than any winter storm. Let's get into it.
Right there. That's the story of Alaric Kurt. And that one sentence is the key to his entire world. You have to understand, the man he was, Captain Alaric Kurt, he absolutely ceased to exist on that mountain. What was left was something else, something born of ice and vengeance. So how did it all go so wrong? We have to start at the source of the trauma. An event so devastating it didn't just end lives, it completely erased one man's future and replaced it with a single, all-consuming obsession.
Okay, so picture this. It's 2029. Captain Alaric Kurt and his elite team, the Silver Claw, are high up in the northern border mountains. Their mission? To oversee what they think are peace talks. And with him is his sister, Lieutenant Ilara, the team's medic. But here's the thing. The peace was a lie. It was a stage, perfectly set for a massacre.
From Alaric's own perspective, his entire world just ends. An explosion rips through the air, throwing him into the snow. He's wounded, disoriented, but his eyes lock onto one single image, the enemy commander, General Varric, standing over his sister. He sees Varric raise a silver-gripped pistol, sees that chilling, empty smile, and then the flash. In that exact moment, Captain Alaric Kurt died, and the ghost was born.
The man who managed to crawl out of that snow was not the same one who fell. You see, the next 3 years weren't about healing. Oh no, they were about reforging that unbearable pain into a weapon. His grief became his fuel. His trauma became his map.
And what's so fascinating here is just how stark this contrast is. On one side, you've got the man he was, a leader, a brother, officially declared killed in action. And on the other side, you have the reality, a phantom, living completely off-grid, his body a roadmap of scars, his entire existence laser-focused on tracking one man, General Varric, who, by the way, is now celebrated as a national hero, living in a fortress that's supposed to be impenetrable.
So this new identity he's taken on, it needed a new tool. Alaric spent years building it. He calls it the Silent Lament. Now this isn't just a rifle, it's a physical manifestation of his mission. Every single piece was scavenged, every component meticulously put together in the freezing solitude of the mountains. This rifle isn't just an extension of his will, it is his will, forged into a cold, precise instrument of revenge. And this detail. This just shows you the sheer depth of his obsession. This isn't just about killing Varric, it's a ritual. He painstakingly engraves the name of each fallen Silver Claw member onto a bullet. It's an act of remembrance. It's a promise. And that very last bullet, the one that truly matters, has only one name on it, Ilara.
With his purpose clear and his weapon ready, all those years of waiting are about to culminate in a single night. All Alaric needs now is the perfect opportunity to walk right into the heart of the beast, the Iron Fortress.
On the night of Varric's big promotion ceremony, the storm of the century hits. For literally anyone else, it's a barrier, a complete lockdown. But for Alaric, it's a formal invitation. The raging blizzard out there perfectly mirrors the absolute tempest raging inside his soul. The chaos of nature becomes his greatest ally, a perfect cloak of wind and snow to hide a ghost. To become truly invisible, Alaric embraces the cold in the most extreme way possible. He injects himself with a serum that drops his body temperature to near-fatal levels, making him a ghost to thermal sensors. He's literally becoming as cold on the outside as he is on the inside, pushing his body to the absolute edge of death. One mistake, and the cold he's using as a weapon will kill him long before he reaches his target.
The infiltration begins. The serum is coursing through his veins, forcing his body into these violent, uncontrollable shivers that threaten to just tear him apart. But beneath all that failing flesh, his mind is like a perfect shard of ice, focused, clear, and cold. He's no longer just moving through the storm. At this point, he is the storm.
Every breath he takes is a cloud of mist in the air, a potential betrayal he has to carefully control, releasing it ever so slowly into the howling wind. He slips between patrol routes, not like a man who's hiding, but like a gap in the storm itself, a flicker in the corner of a guard's eye. He's more a force of nature than a man now.
The guards, they feel nothing. Maybe a sudden, unnatural draft on their necks, a cold that seems to seep right into their bones just before the darkness takes them. There's no sound, no struggle, just the silent, efficient work of a phantom who has spent years studying every shadow, every single blind spot of this fortress.
He reaches Varek's private balcony, as the general is inside celebrating his victory, completely unaware. The cold steel of the silent lament rests on the railing just outside. Death is watching.
So, this is it. The moment everything has been building towards. The final confrontation. But what happens when 3 years of burning hatred are finally unleashed? What's left in the silence that follows?
As Alaric slips from the balcony into the warmth of the room, that's the question just hanging in the air. He lowers his rifle. This isn't going to be some distant execution. No, this has to be personal.
Varek turns, his face twisting from shock to pure terror as he recognizes the ghost from his past. He desperately reaches for his sidearm, but Alaric is just faster. In one fluid motion, he breaks the general's arm, forces him to his knees, and takes that silver-gripped pistol, Ilara's murder weapon, from Varek's own belt.
And just like that, the celebrated hero is a begging coward. He's offering wealth, status, anything a living man might want. But Alaric is way beyond that. He leans in close, and he whispers the last words Varek will ever hear. Elara is waiting for you. The final shot isn't from his rifle. It's from the very gun that started it all.
The next morning, the fortress is in chaos. General Varek is dead, but this wasn't an assassination for political gain or some robbery. Nothing was taken. Instead, laid out perfectly on his desk were 8 dog tags, the dog tags of the fallen Silver Claw team. A message was sent. Justice was served.
The mission is over. The name is crossed off the list. But what comes after vengeance? I mean, what does a ghost do when his haunting is finally complete? As Alaric just melts back into the mountains, he feels the physical weight of his rifle, now unneeded, has lessened. But that weight on his soul, that massive void left by his sister, it's exactly the same. The act of revenge was a destination. It was never a cure. And that, right there, is the crucial point. This 3-year quest gave him purpose. It gave a name to his pain. He called it Varek. But once Varek was gone, the pain was still there, now nameless and vast all over again. He had avenged the dead, sure, but vengeance can't bring people back. It couldn't bring them back, and more importantly, it couldn't bring back the man he used to be. Alaric Kurt vanished into the... First, they took my name. Then, they took my life. Now, I'm just a designation, Ghost 4. I'm the man they send to bury secrets in the dark. So when they sent me to Siberia back in December of '94 to erase a problem, well, they had no idea they were sending me to face the very man who taught me how to be a ghost in the first place. Yeah, that's what they told me. A simple cleanup. Just another job. Find some private military contractors who'd gone dark, sanitize the whole scene, and just melt back into the shadows. But out here, in this howling, empty part of Siberia, simple is a lie you tell yourself right before you die.
You know, on paper, the mission brief looked almost clinical. A team of mercenaries pretending to be investors had vanished near some old, decommissioned Soviet research bunker. My directive? It was absolute. Make sure that whatever they found, and whoever found them, was completely and utterly wiped from existence.
Object 702. Such a sterile code for a place of forgotten sins, buried deep under the permafrost. This whole operation was off the books, unsanctioned, untraceable. You know, just like me. Another state-sponsored secret for the ice to keep.
The official record would just show a blank page, because officially, I was never there. Let me tell you something about this kind of cold. It's not just weather, it's a predator. It seeps right through your gear, turns the steel of your rifle into a brand of solid ice against your cheek. But the silence, oh, the silence is so much worse. It's this heavy, physical thing that presses in on you, makes the crunch of your own boots sound like a gunshot. It's a silence that's actively listening for you. Their bodies weren't just corpses, they were a message. Kill zones were perfectly set up, entry and exit wounds surgically precise. This wasn't some messy firefight. This was a clinical, brutal dissection, a lesson in lethal geometry taught by a true master. Someone who moves like a phantom and kills without a whisper. Someone like me.
See, back in 1988, the state held my funeral. They burned my service records, deleted my entire history, and created Ghost 4. I became their instrument, a phantom that only exists in the shadows they cast. My whole purpose is to be the final word in their darkest secrets. It's the only life I have, and, well, it's my curse.
As I was examining the scene, this dread, something colder than the Siberian air itself, just coiled in my gut. I had seen this kind of brutal artistry before. Only once, actually, on the training grounds, where I was forged into the weapon I am today. And there was only one man who taught this way. Every little detail just screamed his name. The specific diamond knot on a tripwire, the precise angle of a knife cut across a sentry's throat. It was his doctrine, his philosophy of violence. It was completely unmistakable. And totally impossible, because the man responsible, he was supposed to be long dead. Colonel Volkov, the architect of the Ghost program, the man who made me. The same organization I serve left him to die during the fall of the wall. But he didn't die, no. He endured. He waited. And now, these dead mercenaries, they were nothing more than bait on a hook, designed to lure one of his own creations back into the darkness, to lure me.
So you see, we were both ghosts of 1988, forged and then thrown away by the same masters. For 6 long years, he just festered in this frozen tomb, planning his revenge. My mission wasn't a cleanup anymore, not by a long shot. It was a reckoning.
I went down into the black throat of Object 702. The cold outside, it was clean, sterile, but down here, it was stale. It tasted of rust and decay. The hunt was on. But for the first time in a very long time, I honestly didn't know if I was the hunter or the prey. In this concrete maze, we were equals. 2 shadows armed with the exact same tools, trained in the exact same deadly arts. The only sounds were the slow drip of melting frost and the ragged pulse just hammering in my ears. This wasn't going to be a battle of bullets. It was going to be a contest of silence, nerve, and steel. I flicked on my NVGs. The world just dissolved into this eerie, predatory green. And that's when I saw it. A flicker of movement at the far end of a corridor. It wasn't a rush, just a slow, deliberate shift. Oh, he knew I was here. He wasn't hiding, he was inviting me to a dance he taught me all the steps to. I held my breath, trying to become just another shadow in a hall full of them. The air in my lungs burned, but that plume of vapor that bloomed with every single exhale, it was a beacon. Every nerve ending was on fire. I couldn't see him, but I could feel his presence, like a predator's pressure in the dead air. He came out of my left, a blade just whispering past my ear. I twisted away on pure instinct, an evasion that he himself had drilled into me 1,000 times on some dusty training mat. Every parry, every countermove, it was a memory. I was fighting my own reflection in a cracked, merciless mirror.
We broke apart, circling each other in the gloom. I saw his face in the green ghost light of the NVGs. He was older, scarred, but his eyes, they were the same. The eyes of the master who created me. And in that one instant, the mission, the objective, the organization, it all just dissolved into nothing.
He didn't speak, but the question just hung there between us, sharper than any blade. Do I kill the only man who ever truly understood what I am, all for the sake of the bureaucrats who threw us both away? Or do I stand with him against them? Down in this tomb of secrets, who was the real enemy? A choice was made. It wasn't answered with words, but with a final, desperate act of violence that shattered the bunker's long silence. I did what I was trained to do. I completed the mission. I erased the problem.
all of it.
That year, 2 ghosts went to war in a place that didn't exist. In the end, one of them walked out. Or maybe neither of them did. Maybe we both stayed there, buried under the weight of our shared past. The organization got its clean slate. The official story was so neat, so tidy and bloodless. A minor seismic event. The bunker, Volkov, the mercenaries, the truth, all of it buried under thousands of tons of rock and ice. Problem erased.
They think they buried their secrets in that bunker. But here's the thing. A ghost can't be killed. It can only change its shape. So the real question isn't what happened down there in the dark. It's which ghost walked out into the cold. The student or the master? And who will it come for next?
You know, some moments in history aren't decided on a battlefield with guns blazing. They're decided in quiet, tense rooms where the information is foggy and the stakes are just impossibly high. Today, we're going inside one of those rooms during the 1974 Siberia operation, seeing it all through the eyes of a pilot who was there and then fought like hell to get back into the air.
All right, picture this. It's July 19th, 1974. We're in Ankara at the Air Operations Center. Now, this isn't some regular office. This is the underground nerve center of the entire Turkish military, and the air is just thick with the tension of a coming war. Every single decision made in this room is going to have life-or-death consequences.
In this quote right here, from our narrator, pilot Kaya Kanakaran, it really gets to the heart of the chaos. A mysterious convoy of ships just appears on radar, almost out of thin air. This one intelligence report creates a fog of war that's about to lead to a historic tragedy. And it all starts with this deep suspicion in the command center.
So, you might be wondering, how did our narrator, a pilot, end up behind a desk in the first place? Well, just a few days earlier, his life was totally different. He was at the Air Force Academy on a pretty routine trip. But that all changed on July 15th, when the Samson coup hit Cyprus and the sirens of war started screaming across Turkey.
And things moved fast. I mean, incredibly fast. On the 15th, the coup happens, his trip gets canceled. By the 16th, he's pulled from his training and reassigned directly to headquarters. And by the 17th, he's moved into the Underground Air Operations Center. He went from being a student one day to a staff officer at the very heart of war planning the next.
And listen, this wasn't just any headquarters. This was the AOC, the command and control hub for every single plane involved in the Cyprus operation. This place was the beating heart of the entire mission.
Kanakaran describes the atmosphere inside with one perfect phrase: feverish activity. It was just a non-stop, high-pressure environment. Information was constantly flowing, and huge decisions were being made on the fly. There was absolutely no room for error.
So, on one side of the room, you had teams in the final stages of preparation, scrambling to finalize the plans for landings and parachute drops.
Then, in the middle of it all, was the constant coordination with the Army and Navy command centers, a hugely complex dance to get this massive, multi-branch operation in sync.
And through all this chaos, while most of the staff worked 8-hour shifts, Pilot Konakaran stayed at his post for 24 hours straight. He literally became the institutional memory of the center, the one guy who saw the whole picture unfold from start to finish without a break.
And it was during this marathon watch that the critical piece of intelligence came in. Radar had picked up a convoy of ships, and it was heading straight for Paphos on the west coast of Cyprus. This was the moment that changed everything. This was the central, terrifying question that just gripped everyone in command. Was this a Greek reinforcement fleet, a direct threat to the whole operation? Or was it something else? The fate of the mission and the lives of thousands of soldiers all hung on the answer to this one question. Okay, so put yourself in their shoes for a second. The dilemma they faced was immense. The raw intelligence was screaming enemy convoy. But every single time they sent reconnaissance flights for visual confirmation, they came back with nothing. The ships were like ghosts. This raised the very real, very scary possibility of electronic warfare, that the radar tracks were a phantom, a trick. They had to act, but they were acting completely blind.
The Air Force commander, General Alpkaya, he voiced these exact fears in a really tense phone call to the Navy commander. He warned him. He said, "Admiral, if we attack, we could end up hitting our own ships." He laid out all the risks, but the Navy's response was firm and it was clear. We have absolutely no ships in that area. And that assurance, well, it would prove fatal.
Now for pilot Kanakaran, listening to all this from his desk, this growing sense of unease was turning into a conviction. He was a combat-ready pilot, not a staff officer. He felt his real place wasn't in this command center, but in the cockpit of a jet, where he could see the truth with his own two eyes.
So he tries once. He goes to his boss and volunteers, but he gets shut down flat. You have important duties here, they told him. But when the final order to attack that convoy came down, Kanakaran just couldn't stay put. He went to his commander again, basically arguing that with a war on, his skills were needed in the air, not on the ground. And this time, it worked. His commander looked at him and said, "You're right. Take my car. Go. Good luck."
It's 2:30 in the afternoon on July 21st. Kanakaran jumps into his commander's car and tells the driver to floor it to Merted Air Base. It's just a frantic race against the clock. He feels like he has to get to his squadron before they take off, maybe to warn them about all the doubts and the weirdness he saw back in the command center.
As that car is speeding down the road to the airbase, every single second counts. You can just imagine him, almost hearing the roar of the jet engines in the distance.
And then, the gut-wrenching moment. As his car pulls up to the main gate, he looks up and sees his squadron's jets already in the air, climbing into the sky right over his head. They were on their way to attack the ghost convoy. He had missed them by seconds.
So an agonizing wait begins right there on the flight line. When the first jet finally lands, the pilot, Errol Musser, shuts down his engine and Kanakaran climbs right up the ladder. "What happened?" he asks. And the pilot's reply, it confirms his absolute worst fears. "Brother, I think we hit our own ships."
The debriefing that followed was just grim. Everything Kanakaran had suspected in the command center, everything that returning pilot feared, it was now a horrific reality. They had attacked a Turkish naval task force.
You have to understand the impossible situation these pilots were in. They saw Turkish flags. They heard desperate Turkish voices coming over the radio. They saw the ships trying to flee towards home. But their orders were crystal clear, and those ships were in a location they were explicitly told was forbidden to friendly forces. And the final nail in the coffin? They couldn't give the correct secret password. The pilots had no choice but to follow their orders.
The result was a catastrophe. The destroyer TCG Kokatepe was sunk. 3 other Turkish ships were heavily damaged. It was one of the most tragic friendly fire incidents in modern military history.
Years later, looking back on all this is what pilot Kanakaran had to say. His goal in telling this story was never to point fingers or to blame anyone. It was simply to make sure that the hard lessons learned in the smoke and confusion of that day were never, ever forgotten.
And that leaves us all with a pretty sobering final thought. This story is just a stark reminder of how, in the heat of battle, with bad information and immense pressure, the line between victory and disaster can be terrifyingly thin. It shows us that, in the fog of war, sometimes courage and good intentions just aren't enough to stop a tragedy.